The truth about Roy Orbison has finally come out. I don't quite know how to feel when so many people compliment me and use words like legend or inspiration or things like that. These were just gifts that I was given, he once said. Roy Orbison, a rock legend with a career spanning over 3 decades, was one of the most influential musicians of his time. The 1960s saw him dominate the charts with timeless hits like Oh, Pretty Woman and Crying, securing his place as a leading star of the era. Despite his success, Roy's life was far from easy. He endured countless personal tragedies and passed away just as he was enjoying a remarkable career resurgence in the late 1980s. Now, after years of speculation, his 5 children have finally revealed what many have long suspected about their father. Curious to know more? Let's dive in. Roy Orbison was born in Vernon, Texas on April 23, 1936, to Orby Lee Orbison and Nadine Vesta Schultz. He was the second of 3 sons. His father, Orby, worked as an oil field driller but barely made enough to support his family of 5. After the Great Depression hit, he struggled to find work. His wife Nadine was quite different from her husband. While he enjoyed manual labor and providing for the family, she loved painting and even wrote poetry from time to time. Eventually, the family moved to Fort Worth in 1942 to find better work in the aircraft factories. Roy's direct paternal ancestor can be traced back to Thomas Orbison, who was born in 1715. Thomas moved from Lurgan, Northern Ireland, to settle in the province of Pennsylvania in the mid-18th century. One clear trait that set his descendants apart was their inherited eyesight problems, which forced them to wear thick glasses. Unfortunately, as early as 4 years old, Roy also began wearing the thick glasses that would later evolve into the dark frames we all know and love. Roy developed a liking for music from his early childhood days after his father gave him a guitar for his 6th birthday. Although he didn't know how to play at first, his father and older brother were always ready to teach him. By the time he turned 7, music became his main focus in life. Roy shared that his biggest musical influence as a youth was country music. He had a special love for Lefty Frizzell's singing, especially the songs with slurred syllables. He was so inspired by the style that during his time with the Traveling Wilburys, he adopted the stage name Lefty Wilbury. Besides Lefty Frizzell, he also enjoyed Hank Williams, Moon Mullican, and Jimmy Rogers. Interestingly, one of the first musicians he heard in person was Ernest Tubb, who was playing on the back of a truck in Fort Worth. Fort Worth played a big role in Roy's musical upbringing. He once said that an experience that really stuck with him was singing regularly in Fort Worth, surrounded by emotional soldiers who were about to be sent to the front lines. Soon after, he was exposed to rhythm and blues, Tex-Mex, the orchestral arrangements of Mantovani, and Cajun music in West Texas. The Cajun favorite Joel Blonde made a big impression on him and became one of the first songs he sang in public. At 8, Roy began showcasing his singing talents on a local radio show. By the late 1940s, he became the show's host. At 9, he entered and won a radio station contest on KVWC, which led to his own radio show where he sang the same tunes every week. Though he loved music and was making progress, he was still very interested in school. He attended Denver Avenue Elementary School in Fort Worth. However, after a polio scare in 1944, his parents sent him and his brother, Grady Lee, to Vernon to live with their grandmother. At the time, Roy was only 8 years old and World War II was winding down. Later, his parents returned to Vernon. In 1946, they moved again, this time to Wink, Texas, in search of employment. Roy wasn't happy with this move. He described life there as football, oil fields, oil, grease, and sand, and was relieved when he could finally leave the desolate town. When he was younger, Roy didn't care much about his appearance, but as puberty hit and he became more socially aware, he decided to dye his almost white hair black. He was self-conscious about how he looked, and the white hair didn't help. Naturally quiet, he kept to himself and was very polite and helpful. Roy was so shy that during school recess, he would often sit alone and play the guitar by himself, while the other kids played physical games together. This added to his self-consciousness. Because he wasn't good at sports, he became very shy and struggled with low self-esteem. But when it was time to sing, Roy put his shyness aside and was eager to perform. Still, he described his voice as memorable but not special. He might have been shy, but when it came to music, he always had the best ideas. One of these ideas led to the creation of his very first band, the Wink Westerners. At 13, Roy had the idea to gather a few people and form a band. In 1949, the Wink Westerners was born with 3 of his school friends who shared his love for music. Billy Pat Ellis was the drummer, Slob Evans played bass fiddle, Richard West was on piano, and James Morrow played electric mandolin. They leaned toward country standard music and played lots of Glenn Miller songs at local honky-tonk bars and on their weekly morning radio show on KERB in Kermit, Texas. Their first live performance was at a school assembly in 1953. They were even offered $400 to play at a dance. It was then that Roy realized he could make a living from music. So at 15, he decided that instead of just playing the guitar, he would let the guitar accompany his singing. With this new plan, the band started actively seeking work and recognition. They entered a talent contest on KMID television in Midland, Texas in 1953. Thankfully, they won, and the prize was a 30-minute spot on a local television show. As soon as the show ended, Roy asked the owner of the company sponsoring the show if he would sponsor the group for more ongoing shows. The owner agreed, and the group began playing weekly shows on KMID television on Friday nights and on Odessa's KOSA TV on Saturday nights. Upon graduating from high school in 1954, Roy decided to further his education by enrolling at North Texas State College in Denton to study geology. It was meant to be his backup plan to find work in the oil fields if music didn't work out. However, the course bored him in his first year, so he switched to history and English. Still, Roy preferred playing music with fellow students Billy Pat Ellis, Dick Penner, and Wade Moore. Penner and Moore had recently written a simple, catchy rockabilly song called Ooby Dooby, which impressed Roy. This led him to explore how they could record it. His determination grew stronger when he heard that his schoolmate Pat Boone had signed a record deal. Soon, the band switched to rock and roll after a New Year's Eve dance in 1954, where they ended up playing Shake, Rattle, and Roll repeatedly. Elvis Presley also influenced him a lot. Roy saw him perform in 1954 and was amazed by his energy on stage. Unfortunately, at the end of the semester, Roy dropped out of North Texas State College and went to Odessa Junior College. Sadly, the Wink Westerners disbanded in the fall of 1955. Roy then formed a new band called the Teen Kings. The band included Roy, Billy Pat Ellis, and James Morrow from the Wink Westerners, plus Jack Kennelly on bass and Johnny Wilson. Interestingly, Roy met his future wife, 14-year-old Claudette Frady, at a dance where the Teen Kings were performing. Roy's wish came true when the band recorded their first song, Ooby Dooby, at Norman Petty's studio in Clovis, New Mexico in March 1956. Soon after, it was released by an Odessa-based startup label, G-Well, as the B-side of the G-Well 101 single. After the song came out, Roy was sure a bigger record company could sell more copies. He talked to a lawyer about ending the contract with G-Well. They reached an agreement, and the band was free to find a new label to market Ooby Dooby. However, there was a setback. Roy had sent a demo of the song to Columbia Records, which they rejected. One of their artists, Sid King, released a version of Ooby Dooby before Roy could offer the tape to another company. After some struggles and challenges, Sam Phillips, the owner of Sun Records, offered the Teen Kings a contract. They went to Sun Studio in Memphis to re-record Ooby Dooby for release by their new label. Sam Phillips signed the band for a year or two. However, their career soon hit a slump. Roy wanted to record emotional ballads, but Sam demanded rockabilly songs. Sam's search for an Elvis Presley replacement shifted from Roy to Carl Perkins. Soon after, Carl was badly injured in a car crash, giving the Teen Kings a break. This led to Ooby Dooby being released with Go as Sun Single 242 in May 1956. The Teen Kings then began an experimental tour of drive-in theaters in the southern U.S. states, with Sonny James, Johnny Horton, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash. Roy was heavily influenced by Elvis Presley. During his performances, he often sang energetically, doing everything he could to get applause because he believed they only had one hit record. In June 1956, Ooby Dooby peaked at number 59 on the Billboard charts and sold 200,000 copies. However, their follow-up singles didn't make the charts. The band soon faced problems among themselves. A performance at the Overton Park Shell on June 1st, 1956, sparked an argument about who Elvis Presley had praised. Elvis was in the audience, and Roy claimed the singer had complimented him. Another band member argued that it was Jack Kennelly, the bassist, whom Elvis had actually praised. It didn't help that Jack thought Roy wanted to be a star at all costs. The Grammy-winning record pushed the Wilburys into the spotlight, proving they worked so well together. Sadly, Roy's sudden death in December 1988 cast a dark shadow over their future plans. Despite Harrison's dream of more Wilburys albums and a film, the group's spark faded after 1991. Though the members kept working together on solo projects, the 2007 reissue of the Traveling Wilburys collection brought fresh interest in their legacy, with music videos and a documentary celebrating their unique journey. Roy's death left a lasting mark on the Wilburys, leading to heartfelt tributes and thoughts of what might have been. The remaining four, heartbroken by his loss, chose not to replace him, keeping the special magic of their short but powerful teamwork alive. The Traveling Wilburys will always be remembered for their lasting bond and musical collaboration that defined an era. Roy's career was at an all-time high in 1988. His album Mystery Girl was finished in November 1988. His career was surging again, and the Traveling Wilburys' first album was a hit. The 52-year-old was already planning to write an autobiography and hoped Martin Sheen would play him in a biopic. After all the challenges and tragedies he'd faced, he must have been thrilled to see things finally going his way. All he had to worry about were the slight chest pains he'd mentioned to Johnny Cash. They were minor, and he could still travel to Europe to receive an award and perform in Antwerp. A few days after that show, a manager at a club in Boston where Roy was performing worried about his health, but Roy made sure to finish his set. He even played at the Front Row Theater in Ohio on December 4th, then returned home to Hendersonville to relax for a few days before flying to London to shoot 2 more videos. 2 days later, he flew model planes with his sons and had dinner at his mother's house. Tragically, later that day, he suffered a heart attack and passed away at the age of 52. 9 years before his death, Roy had triple bypass surgery, common heart surgery for adults to improve blood flow to the heart after coronary heart disease restricts it. This happens when fatty material builds up in the arteries, blocking blood flow. After the surgery, Roy struggled with weight changes he couldn't control due to his heart condition, leading up to his eventual death. He was survived by his second wife, Barbara, their 2 sons, Roy Jr. and Alexander, and his youngest son with Claudette Wesley. Sadly, Barbara passed away 23 years after her husband from cervical cancer, leaving the 3 brothers as orphans. Still, they stay close in their love and admiration for their father, working hard to keep his memory alive. Alex, also known as Orby, is a drummer, writer, director, and film producer. He's also the president of Still Working Music Group, a publishing company, and president and co-founder of Roy's Boys LLC, where he manages his father's legacy with his brothers. Roy Orbison Jr. followed in his father's footsteps as a musician and record producer. Together, the sons produced and remastered a never-before-heard track released to the public in 2014. For them, hearing their father's voice come alive again was a huge moment. 9 unreleased tracks from the 1960s icon were included in the deluxe edition of Mystery Girl. The Orbison brothers fulfilled their lifelong dream of playing along with their father on a record by adding guitar and drums to the tracks. They even had John Carter Cash, the son of legendary country singer Johnny Cash, join in on the rock royalty project. According to Alex, the whole process brought the siblings closer in many ways. Their parents would surely be proud of them for it.